Awesome. Welcome everybody to this real estate seminar with Jennifer. And she was here with us a few years ago when we did the topic. And I thought she did a great job of just being a real person and sharing real facts. And she did a great job presenting stuff that was super helpful to everybody because it's something that is not a theory to her, but it's something that she has lived. And um, and she's done it through the ups and downs of life. And so not perfect scenarios by any means, but she's been a grinder and really used real estate to help her in the situation. So, and to glorify God and to provide for her and her. So I'll give you the floor, Jennifer, if you want to go ahead and launch.
Thank you, Pastor. What a great intro. I have to give God all the glory for what he's done in just helping me navigate this industry without really having anyone to show me the way. It's just something I kind of fell into, and God has really blessed it. And even through turbulent times, whether it's personal turbulence, health, family issues, or even kind of what we're going through right now, which I find it kind of interesting that here I am teaching this in the middle of a global pandemic when everything is so uncertain. And so I'm excited to teach it because I think there's a lot of things about real estate that are very solid, even when everything seems to be crumbling around you. And it's been great for me. So let's just jump in. So what is real estate investment? Well, this is my first married house. My husband and I, my late husband and I, got married, and this was his house that he had purchased while we were dating. We had lived there for 7 years, and the market crashed. 2008 happened, and if you remember, everyone was losing houses left and right, and all these big, beautiful homes where we lived were on sale, like half price. You could get them foreclosed for ridiculous amounts of money. So my husband and I decided it was time to upgrade. We just had a baby, lots of plastic stuff. This house didn't have a basement. And so we were like, it's time for us to move on. And we found this beautiful forever home. The only problem was that we couldn't sell this house because the market had dipped. And in order for us to sell the house, we would have had to pay money. So what we decided to do at that time was we decided to rent. And that's basically how I got into rentals. It's kind of haphazardly. I believe God knew what he was doing, but I didn't. So this was our first rental. We found a family who had been foreclosed on. They were good people. They had always, paid their mortgage until everything fell apart. We kind of understand that a little bit even right now because we're not sure what's going to happen. And so we rented to them. I still own this house. So that was in 2009. So in the last 11 years, I've maintained this house. I think I'm on my third family in the house since then. So as of 2020, just to give you an example on this one house that we ended up renting just because we wanted to buy a bigger home and we couldn't get rid of this one. The home value has increased by $100,000 in 11 years. So that's some nice money in my pocket. We were able to use the equity in it that we had to pull out cash and buy a rental up here in Northern Michigan and buy that rental for cash. So I was able to acquire a second rental from keeping this house. Over that time, the mortgage has decreased approximately $50,000. Now, keep in mind, I also pulled 40 grand out. So the mortgage would have decreased even more had I not done that. And I've probably put about $50,000 worth of cash in my pocket just from this one house that we couldn't sell because the market crashed. And so it has been a tremendous asset. And this is kind of how I got started. And this is the beauty of real estate investment right here. These kinds of things can happen from one down economy to another down economy. All these good things have happened for me. You can insure anything that you invest in real estate. When you have money in the market, like I said, I lost 25%. I can't buy an insurance policy on that. If something happens to those stocks, I'm out. With real estate, you can insure it. So if a tornado comes and takes your house down, the insurance company is going to build you a new one. So your money is backed up by that insurance policy, whether it's, a tornado happens or you have some type of like a fire, something like that. Your investment is backed up in a way that you don't see very often in other investment areas. We kind of talked about the volatility again, but I just want to show you, this is a different view. This is a 5-year view from 2016 to now. And you can see the ups and downs in the stock market are so much stronger than it is in real estate. And so again, you know, I lost that 25% over that weekend. Now I'm down about 13, I think. I looked right before we hopped on. But my house is, I still have renters. They're still paying. My mortgages are still being paid. Everything is still clicking along in a way that you don't see in the stock market. So again, I believe in diversifying. So don't go with just one area necessarily. Try and work across them all. One of the best parts of real estate investment is the ability that you can use other people's money to build wealth. So you have to be okay with having debt to do that, which I know isn't always something as Christians that we're comfortable with. And so that's something that you have to seek out in a business form. Sometimes as Christians, we feel it's okay because it's a business and it is getting paid and someone else is paying it. But again, that's something as a Christian that you want to seek out. But if you're comfortable with using debt to your advantage, then you're using the bank's money to make money and you're using your tenants' money to make money. So every month you're making more and more money and you're not having to add to it every month like you would with an IRA or a 401k. And the best part is it's passive income. You can make money while you're working another job, while you're sleeping, while you're traveling, while you're staying home raising children, whatever it is that you're doing. With real estate, it's making money. It's just kind of set into motion and it makes money for you. So your money is working for you instead of you working for your money, which is always a great way to build wealth. The funnest thing, I think, and we're going to dig into this one a little bit in depth, the funnest part of real estate as an investment piece is your return on your investment. So if you consider the amount of money that you initially have to dump in and what you get back, the return of investment is so much greater in real estate because you can earn it from 3 different areas. You're going to get a return of investment on your equity. So that's, you know, your house that you have. You buy a house and in the beginning, you have maybe $25,000 in equity. And then as you pay off your mortgage over time, that 25 turns into 30, it turns into 35, it turns into 40. So you're growing your wealth as that mortgage gets paid down year after year. And again, remember, you're not paying the mortgage, your tenants are paying it. So you're making free money right there. The second way that you make money is through appreciation. So as the economy does well and things grow, and we've seen this in the Traverse City area over the last 5 years, it's been amazing what's happened in the market here and how high home values are. It's kind of a hard time to buy in for real estate. In some ways, you have to really look for the deals because the market is so high. But if you can buy in right and ride it up, the appreciation will grow. So you buy a house and now your value or your net worth or the money that you have grows because your house is worth more than what you paid for it. And then the third way that you're making money is through rental income. So you're making enough money to pay your expenses, pay your mortgage, and then you get extra on top that you can keep in your pocket. So I can't think of many investments where you can put money in once and make it on 3 different fronts like you do here. And we'll take a look at these 3 areas. So I pulled this house up today. This is a house that is for sale in Williamsburg. It is on the market right now. I believe it may have a pending offer on it. But I wanted to use this as an example because it's a kind of low starting point and the inside's kind of cute. I actually peeked at it a few weeks ago. So it's a 1,200 square foot house, 3-bed, 1.5 bath. It's a pretty good sell around here. If you're not familiar with the rental market in Traverse City, I'm just going to tell you that it is impossible to find a house to rent in Traverse City. I get calls all the time, even in the Traverse City area. I have houses in Kalkaska, and a lot of times I don't even have to list them. People are contacting me like, hey, do you have anything? And I'm like, oh, something just came up. when I do list, the last house I listed, I had in one day 60 people express interest. In within 24 hours, I had 100 people contact me. So the market is, there just isn't enough housing. People need a place to live. So based on that, you can charge a decent amount. Obviously, as I said, the market's high, so it's expensive to buy a house. So you have to charge enough that you can pay your expenses and still make a little on top. So this is our example house. It's listed at 129, and let's say we get it for $125,000. I kind of threw the rent out there at about 1,300. You may be able to get a little more, but just for our scenario here, we're going to say 1,300, which is a pretty reasonable estimate for a 1,200 square foot house in the Traverse City area, especially Williamsburg being just outside Traverse City. The further away you get from Traverse, it goes down a bit. But even what I'm seeing, even in Kalkaska, is it's really come up a lot for what you can get for rent. So let's talk about the three areas. So the first area we talked about was the equity on your building. So let's say we purchased this home. After 5 years of my tenant paying my mortgage for me, they will have paid off $31,752. So that is money in my pocket. I don't see it in the bank, but it adds into your net worth, and it's money that you no longer owe the bank. So you have increased your value almost $32,000 in that one area in 5 years. And this is based on a 15-year loan. Appreciation. So, houses go up in value for the most part. They continue to rise over time. Even when we had the big crash in 2008, things stayed down for a few years, but they didn't stay there. They grew, they came back up, and houses are now above where they were, well above where they were in 2008, 2009. So let's say, just an estimate, this house raises in value to $245,000 with you doing nothing to it. So there's $20,000 you've also made in that area. And again, this won't be realized until you sell. So the first two are not actual cash in your hands, but it's still considered part of your assets and part of your net worth, just as much as, the money in your stock market that you can't really pull out either. It's looked at that same way by banks. They look at that when they're evaluating you for loans. So it's very valuable, tangible money. You just have to sell the house to get it or do a cash out refi. So we've got $20,000 here. We had 27 on the other. And let me go back to one thing on the appreciation. Any upgrades you do to the house will also cause the house to appreciate. So this house, it could use a little pick me up on the outside, even just painting it, adding some shutters. Those types of things will add to it. If you go inside and you paint the cabinets instead of them being wood, if you put in new flooring, things like that are going to cause the value of the house to go up even further, which again is more money off of your original investment. Now let's talk about real physical cash in your pocket. So if we're talking about a 15-year loan, which this example is based on, you will make approximately $205 a month based on the rental price we said of $1,300. So every month you're getting $200 in your pocket, which over 5 years is about $12,000. I forgot what I was going to say there. I do remember. That's on a 15-year mortgage, and we're going to compare a 15-year and a 30-year so you can see which is better. So you have those three areas that we talked about. You have your mortgage going down, your mortgage balance. You have your house increasing in value, which creates you wealth. And then you have actual cash in your pocket. A rule of thumb that I've heard over the years has been $200 a door should be your base minimum. So if you're making $200 per door, you're doing well. Now it depends what your goals are. You may want, if you're using this to live off of, you may want to find something with more, and we'll talk about that in our next example. So as an investment, you've taken $25,000. If you look at the very bottom of the screen, you've put $25,000 into purchasing this house. If you add up our three different ways that you're making money, your equity, your appreciation, and your cash income from your renter, you can see that in 5 years, you have made $51,000. If you add that with your 25,000, you've now turned $25,000 into $76,000 in 5 years. You've almost tripled what you have there. So it's hard to get that type of a return in any other area. At least if you know of one, I'd love to hear about it. But this is, I mean, I've not gotten that in the stock market. This is amazing that you can put in $25,000 and in 5 years, you've made 50,000 off of that. That's crazy. That's crazy good money. And it will build wealth very quickly for you. So I said this was a 15-year mortgage. And most of the, when I first started investing, I did a lot of 15-year mortgages because my mentality was I want to pay it off quick. And in 15 years, I can retire and all the money from the rental will come to me instead of having to pay off this mortgage. So I didn't care as much about how much I was making every month because $200, oh, that's cool. That's $200 I didn't have. But in 15 years, when I retire from my main job, oh my gosh, I'm going to make a lot of money. So that was kind of why I went into a 15-year mortgage. So you can see here, if you compare the three numbers, a 15-year mortgage really affects your equity more than anything. You know, your appreciation is standard. It's the same whether you have a 15-year mortgage or a 30. Your two things, the variables that are going to change is your equity, so how much your mortgage balance went down over that time, and then your cash income, how much you made. So with a 15-year mortgage, you pay off about $32,000 off of your mortgage, which means it's going to be paid off quicker. And so in that 15 years, it's a pretty nice retirement account, something that I can live off. Now, if you look at a 30-year, you notice that your big stream where all your growth is in your cash income. So you have about $27,000 that you've made in cash in your pocket. It's $461 extra a month. Your equity is only $8,000. So your mortgage has decreased much slower. So those are the things you kind of want to consider as to where you are right now. Now I do more 30-year mortgages because my family situation has changed. Unfortunately, I'm the only provider in my home right now. So, so for me, it was more important to have the extra cash. If you have a kid that you're trying to help through college, that might be a scenario where you're like, oh yeah, I'd rather have the extra cash now. Because it'll help me pay for that or whatever your expenses that you may have. So if it's more important to you to have the cash now, the 30-year is a great option. And I've kind of switched my my target on that a little bit. So still great ROI. If you look at the bottom, you see you put in $25,000. You make $56,000 over the 5 years and brings you to $81,000 total. So it's a great, either way you go, you're doing really, really well with your 25K initial investment. And then here's just a little bit of a better comparison for you. And this is in your handout, so we don't have to spend a lot of time here now, but it just kind of compares the difference between a 15-year and a 30-year loan and which you may want to do. And if you decide that you want to jump into real estate and you want to get into the rental market, come back to this and look and really determine what is your goal. Is your goal to, you know, chip off the mortgage and make a little bit now so that in 15 years it's free and clear? Or would you rather have the extra cash in your pocket right now? And then you would have the longer period for your mortgage payment. So how does real estate investing work? We know it's a great way to make money. It's a great way to build wealth, increase your net worth. How does it work? The first thing I would recommend that you do is get educated. There's so much I have learned since 2009 as I've done this. I went from one house to now I have 10 houses. And I have all different kinds. I have some up here. I have some downstate. I have student housing at Michigan State. So I've dabbled a little bit in some different areas. But I really think that getting some solid foundation helps a lot as you're learning and stepping out in this. These are all 3 books that I've read after I got in it that have really helped me. They've helped me save money. They've helped me protect myself better. They've helped me understand how to do my taxes and save money on taxes. So definitely, for sure, the first one would be Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he does a great job about talking about why you want money working for you instead of working for your money, and how that's really the key to developing wealth, is having that scenario. And real estate is a big part of that. And then the other 2 are very specific about, if you're in real estate, things that you need to know or take advantage of. Our government is very pro real estate. And one of the things that I've learned about our tax code is designed to get people to do certain behaviors. So it's kind of like a carrot. So they say, you know what, we really need people to create low-income housing in Traverse City. So let's give tax credits for people who do that. And people get all excited and go, oh, okay, and they dangle wherever that carrot is, they follow. So real estate is one of those areas that our government wants us doing. They want us purchasing homes and providing places to live for people. And so there are a lot of tax benefits that are given to us by the government, designed to make it advantageous for us so that we will get involved in this activity and create this housing that is so needed. And these books have helped me a lot learn those and to take advantage of them. The next thing you'll want to do is you want to make sure that you have a good team around you. And first and foremost, you need a good realtor. A good realtor is going to not only help you find properties, but they should, in my opinion, a good realtor is going to help you kind of determine if it's a right fit for you. My realtor is amazing, and he will walk through and he'll say, did you notice this? Look at this over here. Even though that's not necessarily his job. He brings me a stack of the last sold. I mean, all this, I get a stack like this when I walk through a house. He will bring me comps of other things in the area that have sold, what they've sold for, that's similar to this. So he's a very good resource. So I feel comfortable when I walk through a house, you know, talking with him, because he's looked at it. He knows what to look for. He knows where to find. He'll catch things sometimes that I don't. Hey, did you notice how old that furnace was? And I'm like, oh, no, I didn't even pay attention. So having a good realtor is important. I did have a realtor once that I tried a new one because my other guy was busy, and this person basically met me in the driveway and said, all right, head on inside. Didn't give me paperwork, didn't walk through it with me. And so I think finding someone that knows what you're looking for and can help you is important. Now, your realtor is obviously not a house inspector, and that's something that you're going to want to go ahead and do, but it can help save you a little trouble if they're observant and they catch things like, oh, did you notice, you know, looks like there was some water damage over there on the ceiling, things that you may not know to look for right away. The next thing you need is a good lender, someone to work with. There are a lot of companies out there that are able to do mortgages. So just finding someone that you're comfortable with, that can be creative. Sometimes we need to be a little creative with what we're doing, and finding someone who can help you with that. And just going back to that same person time and time again is a great resource. Sometimes you find a house. I found a house over, trying to think, it was like New Year's Eve weekend, and I'm like, I need a pre-approval letter, and I'm very complicated because I have so many houses, so I have to send him everything. And he later told me, he says, yeah, I was out of town at a wedding that weekend, and between the service I kept going back to my hotel room and getting all your stuff prepped so I could get you your letter. And I was like, I felt bad, but at the same time, like, he did that upon himself to help me get the pre-approval letter. So you want someone who's, you know, who's going to work with you and move quick, because in real estate deals, when you find it, you've got to have your pre-approval letter, and you've got to be able to move on it quick, because probably other people have found it too. Having a good accountant or a lawyer is also important. For an accountant, you know, you want someone who has experience with real estate accounting, because there are a lot of ways that you can save money on your taxes. And if they're not aware of it, you could be missing out on that. I was able to save myself $9,000 in taxes one year, because I'd read a book and I was like, oh, does that apply for me? And then I asked my accountant, and he's like, yeah, I think it does. And I saved $9,000. So having an accountant who's aware of those things is very helpful. And then you'll want to have a handyman or a property manager. That could be you. If you're very handy around the house, that makes it super easy. Because the thing about real estate is something is going to go wrong with the house. It always happens. And the more houses you have, the more demanding it becomes. I feel like with me having 10 houses, there's almost always one house that needs something. And I try to be a good and reasonable landlord. I try and treat the house as I were living there. So I don't like to drag my feet or, oh no, it's not a big deal. So having a handyman or someone who can handle that, even if you don't want them calling you, that's where a property manager comes in, and you can just pay them and you don't have to deal with any of the calls, any of the hassle. But it's very easy to be able to make calls and get things fixed. I have 2 houses in Metro Detroit and 1 at Michigan State. And I promise you, I do not drive down there and I don't know how to fix things. I tried removing a toilet once so that I could do flooring and I broke it. So I leave that to other people to handle. Then the last thing you need to do is you need to have a down payment. Now, when you're buying your principal residence or your house that you're living in, banks are really forgiving and flexible, and they will let you get into a house for 3% down, 5%. It does not work that way for investment properties. If you are not going to be living in that house, you will have to give 20% down. That is 99% of the time, that's what happens. I did find a lender who was able to give me a 15% down, and I was kind of like, wow, I didn't know that was an option. But he's the only person that's ever been able to do it for me. Everybody else has always been 20% down. So that's a big chunk of money. So you want to save for that. Another thing that you may want to consider, think about, pray about, see if you're comfortable with it, is if you have a lot of equity in your home, about maybe taking the equity out of your home, refinance, get the cash out to buy a rental property. Because when you do that, the thing I always remember about purchasing a house is whatever money you put into it, you didn't spend that money. It's like the house is like a big bank account, and it's just holding it for you until you sell. So if you have that $25,000 and it's sitting in your house, you could take it out of the house you live in and go plop it over here. In 5 years, like the example we talked about, you've now created an additional 50,000 or so from that 25 that was sitting in your house doing nothing. It's something to consider. Obviously, don't overextend yourself. Be safe in what you're doing. I don't believe in high risk things, but it's an option if you're like, oh my God, I will never come up with $25,000. Something to think about. So then you need to find the property. Start where you live. I think knowing the area is the smartest way to invest, because every time I try something in an area I'm not familiar with, I am terrified. Like when I bought my first house in Traverse City, because I was investing in Kalkaska, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so scared. Like, am I going to charge the right amount of rent? Because you don't always know, because you don't live there. You don't know the community. You don't know the heartbeat, what's going on. So I always encourage, look in your immediate area. Don't start down in Grand Rapids. Don't start in Metro Detroit. Start where you live. You want to know how saturated that is. How hard is it to find rentals? We know living here, it's impossible to find rentals. So you get a rental, you're going to be able to get it snatched up really quick. If you do it in another area, you don't know that information. They could have tons of rentals available. You want to know the demographics of the community, how high the average income level is, because you don't want to buy a house where you need $1,300 rent, but nobody in that area is paying that. Everyone else is paying $800, and you won't be able to find someone who can afford it. So you want to know the demographics of the community, making sure that there's good employers in the community, that there's good consistency of job availability in the community as well. And you want to know the current rental rate. Some ways you can find that out is just looking at ads and seeing. I've done that to find out what the rental rate is, or like, okay, how many properties are really out there right now. Facebook has become kind of the main way that we really do this nowadays. When I first started, I was having to list stuff on Craigslist. Now, if I list something on Craigslist, I barely get a response. But if I put it on Facebook Marketplace, I get so many people contacting me. So even just watching, like find the local rental pages and start watching what people are posting them for. You know, I do the same thing even just in the real estate market. I get an automatic email every time a new house under $150,000 goes up in any of our local counties. So I can kind of watch and see what's happening. Oh, prices are rising, or oh, look, prices are being reduced all the time. And it just lets you know where things are, which is very valuable for when you're looking to purchase something. The most important thing you can do when you're picking a house to rent is remember this house is not for you. You're not going to live there. So I have this attitude about it's a rental. So it makes everything a little bit easier, less emotional. Make your decision based on the numbers, because if the numbers don't make sense, it's not going to work. You're not going to make money. You're going to struggle with it. Now, when you're buying your own personal house, it's very much about, oh, I love the setting. Look how cute it is. When you're buying a rental house, it's about how much money can I make on it and making sure that you're covered so that you do make that extra 200 or more every month. And there are apps that you can use. And I do this every time I pick out a house. So that house that I showed you, I pulled up my app today and I said, okay, let's say I buy it at full price and my down payment is going to be 20%. You can see that there. Put in the interest rate. I do 30 years. How much are my taxes? You can look all that up, because when you buy a house for a rental, your taxes are not going to be the same as if you buy the house you live in. They kind of almost double. So you get charged a lot more in taxes. So you want to calculate for that when you're making this decision about, do the numbers add up? So I put that in. I've done it enough. Insurance is usually give or take around $1,000. So based on all that, it tells me at the top, my monthly payment is going to be $855. So that's where I go, okay, I can charge $1,300. It's going to be $850. I'm going to make about $460 a month on this rental. Yeah, that sounds like a good deal. I also run it in a 15-year so that I can decide, okay, which one do I want to do? Because given the choice, I usually prefer a 15-year because it's less time. And I don't love having debt, although with real estate investment, I have a lot of it, but it's all getting paid by other people. So I feel okay with that. So those are the things that you really want to look at when you're purchasing a house. It's not so much about the appeal. It's not so much about, oh, this would be perfect. It's a numbers deal. It's not an emotional purchase like when you purchase your own home. And people who are renters are a lot more flexible in what they'll take for a home. Not to say, I'm not saying like be gross and don't keep your house up. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, like, when someone is looking for their home to purchase, like, people get really picky and they're like, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. When people are looking to rent, they know, like, I need a place to live tomorrow. And I looked at house A and I looked at house B. Which one do I like better? And it's just a different mindset. And so some of those things that you may think, oh, I don't know that it would be great. It will be fine. Like, and I come in and I redo them. I put on fresh paint. I upgrade the flooring. I make them really cute, and people are always really happy. And so those little things where I'm like, oh, it doesn't have a paved driveway, they don't even notice. It's not a big deal. So again, this was our example, and I'll just take you through it again. Let's say we bought it for $25,000 down. On a 15-year, the mortgage would be about $1,000, rent $1,300. So you're making about $200 a month. On the 30-year, same thing, just making sure my numbers work. I'm making $460 a month. So to me, this looks like a good buy. As long as you're going to make money on it and there's demand in the area, it's a good idea. Securing a loan, like I said, you're going to need 20% down. There are two different types of mortgages. You can get a personal mortgage or a commercial mortgage. I highly recommend just keep getting personal mortgages as much as you can. It's just like it's the same mortgage you get for your house. It'll be in your name, which makes it a little bit different. The commercial mortgage is in that business name, so it doesn't show up on your credit report, but you get to claim all the income, so it works out okay. Also, the interest rates are way better, and and it's just there, it's a lot more flexible. So I do almost all of mine are personal mortgages. I do have some commercial, but the interest rate is way better on a personal mortgage. You will pay a higher interest rate on your investment properties, though. You will not get the same interest rate that they're showing for your home. Just be aware of that. Things are always a little more expensive because you're using it to make money. But hey, when you're making, you're making 200% on your money in 5 years, like what's an extra 0.5% in your mortgage rate? So work with your realtor, know the comps, know what's happening in the area. Make sure you get an inspection during your inspection period. Usually it's 10 days from the time that you sign the documents. Get it inspected. Make sure you know what you're buying. Don't be afraid of fixer-uppers, because you're going to be able to get into them lower. You're going to get less money for it. And a lot of times it's just cosmetic stuff. So fresh coat of paint, some new flooring, not a big deal. You may run into some little issues here. Like sometimes you'll buy a foreclosed house and they're like, well, the water's shut off. We don't know what happened. I bought a ton of them, and I think I've only spent maybe $500-600 on a plumber ever to repair anything that's ever, a pipe burst. No big deal. We swap it out. So just know there'll probably be some things that you need to fix. It's not a big deal. But getting your inspection will help you know what those are. So then you can again say, okay, is this something I'm willing to take on or not? Make sure that you allow at least 45 days to close your purchase. Before you close, you want to insure the home. Obviously, so that you have backup, and set up an LLC. One of the great things about real estate is that you can put each of these houses in their own LLC, which means you are no longer liable because you don't own the house. The company does. Now you own the company, so basically you own the house. But in legal terms, if something happens at that house, say somebody falls and falls down the stairs and now they want to sue you, they can sue that company that holds the house. They can't sue you. So it protects your personal home. They also can't sue any other company that you own. So if you have 3 houses and each house is owned by a different company and someone gets hurt at house 1, they can't touch house 2 or 3. So worst case scenario, you lose one piece of the puzzle instead of all of them. So it's just a really smart tip that I learned along the way. So next, you want to prepare the house for tenants. What kind of remodeling does it need done? Set your rental fee, set your security deposit amount. And generally security deposit is 1 to 1.5 months of rent. Consider if you're going to allow pets or not. If you do allow pets, I strongly recommend you get a pet fee. Pets are going to increase the wear and tear on the house. I will say that a lot of people don't allow pets. So if you do, you're going to have a much easier time getting it filled, and you can charge extra for it. So I usually charge $50 a month for pets. If they have, 3 or more, I charge $75. And it's just extra money in my pocket, and it kind of offsets the cost if I have to change out carpeting later or things like that. Then you want to obviously have people apply, have a formal application for them. These are all things that you can get online. I think I bought the real estate package from Zoom Legal when I started doing this 10 years ago, and I still use the same one. So it has my application, it has my lease already written in there for me. So you want to make sure you have the right legal documentation to protect yourself and set the boundaries of who is responsible for what. Selecting your tenant, you want to advertise. And like I said, Facebook is one of the best ways right now to do that. Require applications, make them verify their salary, do background checks and credit checks, do all those things on people. One thing that I'm considering doing is requiring proof of funds to move in. Because I had someone not long ago, God saved me. He so saved me. I had someone that said, oh yeah, I've got all the money to move in. And then it came time, and all of a sudden she didn't have it all. And then a couple days later, a little bit more came. And then it was time to exchange keys, and she didn't have it then. And so I backed out. I contacted my lawyer, and I'm like, nope, we're not doing this. You said you had it. You didn't. You misrepresented yourself. But since then, I've thought it wouldn't be a bad idea if they say, yes, I have the 2,500 required to move in to say, I need some verification of that before I select you. Especially in our area, people want to be selected. I have had people like, you know, pull me aside and just be like, we really need this house. We really like it. We really, please pick us. They really want to be picked. And so if you set your bar high, this is what I need from you. They're not going to question if they really want it. And if they're not willing to provide some of the pieces that you need, that's probably a warning sign, because plenty of people will be like, yep, I can show you, it's in my bank. Let me show it to you, because they do want a good place to live, because they're so rare. So you want to show the property, you want to interview your prospective tenants, obviously meet them in person. One of the things that I've done, and I do this even in my business when I'm interviewing people to be an employee, just get people talking. You can tell a lot about a person the more they talk. And so it is huge to me that I meet the people I'm interested in. When they contact me, I get on the phone with them right away so I can get a sense of who they are over the phone and ask them some questions. And then if they get selected for a showing, because I can't show the house to 100 people, I just get real chatty with them, and people get real chatty, and you can kind of get a feel for who they are and if that's kind of the person that you're comfortable working with, and let the Holy Spirit guide you in who to select. That's worked really well for me. Having the Holy Spirit is a huge advantage when you're selecting tenants. So then when you select them, notify them, and then require that they give you the security deposit in order to hold the property for them. When you're receiving your monthly payments, you want to make sure it goes into a separate bank account. Because this is a business, all of your business expenses should be completely separate from your family. So deposit all that money in there, pay your mortgage from it, open up a savings account, put some away every month for repairs, taxes, if you need to pay for your taxes, outside of your mortgage. Your mortgage should take care of that for you, but if you do a certain kind of mortgage, it won't. So you need to prepare for that. And then if you have extra left over, which you should, enjoy that for yourself. So then make a withdrawal and put it into your own personal bank account. It's really, really important that you keep the two separate. If it's a business, you have to treat it like a business and keep all of those business transactions in a separate account. So over time, what's going to happen? Your net worth is going to increase because you have more equity in the house because your mortgage is going down. The house is going to increase in value because of the repairs you've done or just time. And then you've also gotten money along the way. So now that that's happened, you can sell if you want. You want to cash out and you're like, I'm done with this. I just want all my money. You can sell the house, or you can reinvest your equity. That's what I did in that house I told you at the very beginning. I had that house and we had a bit of equity. And so I said, well, I'm going to pull out $45,000 from that house. I refinanced the house. They wrote me a check. I took that check to another house and bought it. And I was able to get this house without any income out of my pocket at all. I was still making good money every month on my rent. And now I'm making money on rent on this house. And I didn't even have to put any money in my pocket. Take any money out of my pocket, sorry. So some of the benefits of real estate investment. Like I said, there are a ton of tax benefits. A couple that I want to share with you. There's two. One is depreciation. So the government says, you buy this house, we understand that things are going to go wrong with the house, and a 30-year-old house is not as nice as a brand new house. So they consider that depreciation, and it's a paper loss. So every year when you file your taxes, example, if you have a $100,000 house, they'll give you about $2,000 off of what you made. So if you made $5,000 on that house in your pocket from rental income, they say, okay, well, $2,000 of that doesn't count because your house is getting old and whatever. So $2,000 tax-free. It's kind of nice. And that's how things happen, where you hear about certain people that are in real estate and how do they not pay any taxes? It's from these types of things that they've given us, is that you can depreciate it. And so you get free tax-free money legally from the government because your house is going to devalue over time because it's a building and buildings fall apart and whatever. So that's the first one. So you get 100% of the depreciation, even though you have a mortgage and you don't even own 100% of the house. Technically, you know, they still own it. You get to depreciate all of that. You don't have to share that with the bank. So that's kind of a nice little bonus. The second thing is the capital gains savings. So I believe capital gains tax is about 15%. So if you were to sell your rental house and take all the cash and keep it, the government's going to say, okay, great, I get 15% of what you sold. Now, say you want to sell your house, but go buy another one. They will let you sell. You have to do it in a certain process. It's called a 1031 exchange, but you can sell it, take that money you made and go buy another house and not have to pay anything. So it's kind of a tax-free way of increasing your value, and then you don't have to pay taxes on that until the very end when you cash out completely. So you can go from $100,000 house, sell it, take your money, purchase a $200,000 house, and so on. And so you can grow your value there without having to pay taxes on it until you get to the very end and you cash out. Another benefit of real estate investment is leverage. Now, leverage is a fancy word for using other people's money to increase your value. And here we're talking about using the bank's money. So just to give you an example on this one, and mine is partially blocked. So hopefully I read these numbers right. I was worried that was going to happen. So for the leverage example, if you take, say you have $125,000, okay? And you're going to go buy a house. You can buy that house for cash, which is the no leverage example to the far right. Okay, so you buy that house for $125,000. You pay $125,000. In 10 years, your rent amount is whatever it says there. That's nice. That's a lot of money.
120,000 it says.
Okay, so that's what you've made from rent over the years. Keep in mind you'd have to pay taxes and insurance for the house. House property taxes and insurance, so it'd be a little bit less than that. The value of your house becomes $150,000 over that time. And so you can see your equity has now increased. Is that 115?
Yes.
Okay, so at the end of this time, in 10 years, you had $125,000. Now at the end, you've turned that 125 into 208,000. That sounds pretty great. That's nice. That's what you do if you buy for cash. That's cool. Not a bad scenario at all. But if you use the bank's money, so you have $25,000 only to put into it, instead of buying it for cash, you only put in $25,000. In 10 years in rent, you'll make about $19,000. Your value is $150,000. Now let's subtract what you still owe on your mortgage, which is $80,000. So your equity in the house is about $69,000. So if we add your $69,000, that like kind of your bank account sitting in your house, plus the rent you've made, $19,000, that gives you $88,000. So you took $25,000 and in 10 years, you turned it into $88,000. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So if you look, we calculate the ROI. If you do leverage, you've made about 3.5 times your money of what you've put in. Not leverage, you've about just under doubled it, right? Both good scenarios. But what if you have $125,000 and instead of buying one house for cash, you use the leverage, you take a mortgage, so you're not having to put a lot down on each house. You spend all 125, but you do it 5 times. You put 25, 25, 25, 25, 25, 5 houses. Now let's look and see what happens. So your 125 that you had, in 10 years, your rent, you've made $96,000 compared to the 120 you would have made on one house. Your 5 houses, you've now in equity, almost $350,000. That's about halfway between $250,000 and $500,000 in equity, which is your net worth. Like that's money that you can claim that you have, compared to the 115 if you just bought the one house. So add it all up, and in 5 years, you've made $234,000 more using the bank's money than just using your own. So leverage is a miracle thing. And if you had $125,000, either way is good, buying a house for cash or just doing the 20% down and getting a bunch of them. But you can see the difference, almost a $500,000 total off that 125 compared to 200,000. It's very significant. And then every year, like we talked about, every year the houses are going up and your mortgage is going down. So you're just getting richer and richer times 5 instead of times 1. So real estate, we talked about this a little bit before. Just to summarize, it's a protected investment. So any property damage, it's insurable. If your house burns down, the insurance company is going to come and rebuild fresh for you. So you're going to have a nicer house, and they will pay to cover your rent that you lost. Also protecting yourself. Like I said, with the LLC, so I have 10 properties. It sounds like I'm a really good target, but each one is owned by an LLC. So if anything happens at one of those properties, they only get that property. Nobody can get all of my stuff. It's not going to happen. So it helps protect you and keep your personal wealth separate from your properties. So some of the questions I get, is, oh, what if something happens at the house and I get sued? We talked about that. You're protected. So they might get one house. Like that would be a bummer for sure. But getting all 10 would destroy me, right? Totally different scenario. What about tenants that wreck my house? And I've had people say, oh my God, I would never rent. I had this one time and they destroyed my house. And I've been doing this 10 years. I have 10 houses. I'm not going to say every tenant is perfect because they're not. But remember how I said it really helps to have the Holy Ghost guiding you when you're selecting your tenants. And I think that has been one of the biggest factors for me, that I haven't had them ruining my houses. Screening tenants is huge. Do it yourself. Do not let a realtor or someone else, this is my opinion, rent out your house for you, because they don't care about it the way you do. And I have known people that have said, oh, my realtor is just going to select the renter for me. And they've end up having to foreclose and kick them out, or not foreclose, whatever it's called, I can't think, having to kick them out because they didn't pay and then their house was trashed. So it is really important that you screen your tenants. I think that's really important. Background check, credit check, be selective. If you don't find someone you're comfortable with, wait. Do regular inspections. If they know you're going to pop in, they're going to take better care of the house, and set ground rules for issues. One of the things that I always say is, are you a smoker? And everyone says no for the most part. And I say, okay, that's good. But let me tell you what the rules are if you are. And if I do an inspection and I find that there has been smoking in the house, this is what I'm going to do. Because of course people want the house, right? So I don't know if they are or not. And I wouldn't not pick someone because of that. Some people may, and that's fine. But for me, I put it out, or like, yeah, I allow pets. You don't have any? Okay, well, if you get some, you have to notify me, and, just keeping that out there. Another downside, people think, oh, I'm responsible for the repairs. It's really not that big of a deal. Especially if you're saving some money aside every month to cover that in like an emergency fund. You can repair them yourself, you can hire people, or you can hire a property manager to handle everything for you. This is the most important thing I want to talk about, and it's almost, I think it's my last slide. What if the market crashes? So we're all in our houses wondering what is going to happen in our economy. Like, we just stopped everything. What's going to happen in the market? What's going to happen to our jobs? Are people still going to go out to eat? What's going to happen? And I've been asking that a lot. Like, I wonder what's going to happen. Is the housing market going to stay strong? Are we going to crash? One of the things that I love about real estate is I feel like like I said earlier, it's not very volatile. So even though we're in this place right now, people still need places to live. Okay. All of my tenants still need a place to live. So even though the governor has said you cannot evict people right now, that's the word, evict. Even though she said you can't evict them right now, it doesn't mean you can't later. So people are aware and they want to pay their rent, and they want to get things taken care of. I mean, most people, that's the first bill they pay. So even with everything going crazy, I only have 1 out of my 10 tenants that is not able to pay rent right now. And that's pretty amazing. So that tells you it's somewhat isolated. And I worked with her and I said, you know what, I'm going to extend you 60 days. Let's keep in touch. Let's talk. Cause I know all these stimulus packages that are coming, and she's going to be okay. And she's going to be able to pay and catch up. No problem. So even if the real estate market crashes, and let's say next fall, everything's worth way less. Well, I haven't lost anything until I sell. My mortgages are still going down every month. I'm still making money in my pocket. Um, I can't say that about the stock market, right? I lost a bunch of money in the stock market. It's not sending me cash while it's down. It's not increasing my equity while it's down. It's just down and it's gone. Well, with real estate, because you have those 3 areas, one area can be hurt and the other 2 are still providing for you. So the other thing is, what if we find a bunch of foreclosures? Like, what if the market crashes and all these people are losing their homes? One, that means houses are on sale, half price, buy a bunch up, or don't let me buy them. No, I'm just kidding. Or the second thing about that is homeowners are great renters. I've had a couple tenants, especially when I first started, that came from foreclosures and they lost their house due to the economy crashing or whatever. And they were good people and they just needed a place to live. So even if everything crashes right now, I still think like people need places to live. They need good quality places to live. And that's never going to change. So that was my last slide. Yay. So I went a few minutes over. I'm sorry about that.
You did great.
But I threw a lot of information at you guys, and I am ready to answer any questions if you have some.
Okay, can you hear me, Jennifer?
I sure can, yes.
Great job. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
all that information. And you
Thank
can tell you put a lot of hard work into that.
Thanks. I'm a numbers nerd, so I get a little detailed, but I hope you guys were able to follow.
I think that's where, it takes a lot of the confusion away from it. So I think those details are important for an audience like this that's considering this. What about zoning issues? Have you ever run into certain areas that you say, well, you can't do a rental property in this neighborhood or such like that?
So there are some issues that you will find. If you're doing a single family residence, it's very rare to find zoning issues. That's usually if you're trying to do like a duplex or something like that. If a house that you find is in a commercial zone, it can always go to residential, at least from my understanding and research, but you can't take a residential zoning and make it commercial, if that makes sense. Now, I mentioned earlier, I have a house at Michigan State. So I did some research there because there they require licensing. And so I have to do licensing every year for people to be able to live in that house. But for the most part, it's if you're doing an annual rental, not an Airbnb, you don't really run into that a whole lot up here.
Okay. Next question. You mentioned an email list where you get notified when houses come on the market under a certain dollar value. What email list is that?
What I did is I went to my realtor and I said, hey, can you let me know anytime a house goes on the market under $150,000 in Grand Traverse, in Kalkaska, in Antrim, and it just shoots to me. And so I get notified almost every day. So you can get that from your realtor. And I picked 150 just because kind of knowing my numbers in the market, that's kind of where you need to be. Under that's kind of my sweet spot, and that's where I feel comfortable purchasing. And if you don't, if none of you have a good realtor that you work with, my email address is there. You can Facebook message me. I'd love to refer the people that I've used for realtor, mortgage people, any of those contacts. If you have someone you love, keep working with them, please.
Super. So that whole thing was set up through your realtor.
He doesn't even know unless he's watching on Facebook.
No. I mean, the email list was set up.
Oh, yes.
Set that up.
Yes, it was. Yep.
Then tell me your favorite apps, real estate apps that you use.
Okay, my favorite. I love realtor.com. Anytime I get something from my realtor, I go to realtor.com and save it. So you can see, I just pulled up. So like these are all the listings that I've kind of favorited. So I love that. I have a whole set of realtor apps. So I use Realtor. Trulia and Zillow are helpful sometimes. They give you like estimates of what they think it's worth. I find it's not as accurate in Northern Michigan as other places. One app that I highly recommend is Calc. It's this one right here. And that's my little mortgage calculator that I use. And I use this all the time, so I can just hop on and enter in numbers and change things up, and it'll tell me, you know, hey, if I pay 125 for this house, what's my mortgage payment? If I pay 115, what's my mortgage payment? And it kind of helps me determine my numbers. And it's really easy to use.
What was it called? QL?
It's by Quicken Loans, so it's QL Calc.
Oh, Calc. Okay.
Yep, like for calculator. It's yeah. So it helps me. I don't know if you can see that. Helps me to do all that.
Got it. You can stop your screen share, and then your face will be bigger on the screen for everybody.
Oh, that's a
you
good
still
idea.
have your last slide up. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
The way we can see all that. QL Calc. Good. All right. So here's a few other questions. Do you set the amount of rent? How do you set the amount of rent? Do you add a percentage above the mortgage to cover repairs or unseen costs?
I set the rent purely by market value. What things are going for in the area. And I know that by looking at listings and watching listings all the time. Sometimes I'll just kind of throw something out there. For example, I had a house out in Kalkaska and I was like, I feel like it's probably this amount. And I threw it out and got 100 responses in 24 hours. And that told me I should have listed higher.
Low, yeah.
Yeah. And what I do is, and this is an important thing, every year when I renew my lease, I give people an increase in their lease, in their rent amount every single month, because my expenses are going up. And I don't think it's fair to be like, oh, it's the same. And then all of a sudden in 5 years be like, haha, I'm raising you $150 now. So I do a small increase, $25, whatever, just a little bit to keep it moving. But then when they move out, and the market has changed. Like I have one right now, she's paying $850 a month, and I've got new tenants signing at $1,100. So I increase it when the new tenant comes in instead of increasing it significantly on my tenants in there. I give them a little increase every year, but
sure, okay, that's
I just
awesome.
go by the market.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, do you recommend commercial properties for investment?
Commercial properties are great for investments. I haven't done any. And like I said earlier, when I venture out into a new area, I get terrified. So I know people that have done really, really well with that. And it's kind of it's a little bit of a different beast than residential. But yeah, absolutely. They're great. You can make a lot of money off of them. And I would recommend finding some books and listening to what people recommend on that, because it's a very different way of valuing what you're getting and how much you're going to make off of it.
Yeah, it's all about cap rates and square
Yes.
feet. Yeah, it's a different language altogether. Yeah, I'd like Commercial Real Estate for Dummies. It's probably the best starter book I found for that. The For Dummies series does a good job of
Awesome.
giving you information right where you can digest it.
I'll remember that if I ever take the leap.
Yeah, Commercial Real Estate for Dummies, good book. Do you recommend partnerships for investment projects? Would you go in partnership with somebody on a rental property?
So if you listen to Dave Ramsey, I'm a big Dave Ramsey follower, except for the fact that I have a lot of mortgages.
We won't tell him.
One of his sayings is the only ship that doesn't sail is a partnership. And I'm not going to say don't do it, but if you don't need to, I think it's always easier to work on your own. There's a lot of things that can go wrong in a partnership. Even I'll just be honest. So my ex-husband and I established a lot of rentals together. And so when we divorced, like I lost some rentals and some net worth, and that was kind of yucky. And, so even that was a partnership, even though it was marriage, and that's a good partnership to have. But even in that scenario, that ended, and there was some splitting, and okay, you get this house and I get this house, and how do we divide? And so if you can do it on your own, I would suggest that first. But if you can't and you and a friend want to go in together, one of you brings the money, the other gets the mortgage or whatever, I would just say outline things very carefully. Get an agreement between you that outlines who's responsible for what, have everything written in some type of legal agreement to kind of protect you guys.
Yeah, there's some scenarios that I've run across where somebody's really handy and they can do the fixer up, and somebody says, well, I'll give you the cash for the down payment and you go 50-50 or whatever.
Mhm.
Maybe you're
Yeah.
you're diversifying skill sets at that point.
Yeah. And to be honest, I have a flip house that I'm doing that with. Um, and there are some definite benefits to that. Again, I do think it's one of those things that if you have all the skill sets and you can do everything, it's just a lot easier, less complicated to do it on your own.
Right.
But if you can't, partnerships they're not a bad thing. Just outline things before you go into it and have a legal document defining everything.
Yeah, I even coach people, even amongst Christians, write it down, because it's not that anyone's trying to be deceptive. It's just everybody has different memories and different assumptions.
Yep.
So get everything in writing so that we can refer back to that, because ink doesn't forget. And it's not about deception. It's just sometimes about perception that needs to
Yeah.
be clarified.
And it's a business agreement. At the end of the day, it's a business agreement. And so you want to treat it like you would with anybody else, even if you didn't know them.
Exactly. Okay. Next question. What's the average repair cost on each house? Is there a percentage of rent? Is it important to know how much of your profits will it eat up? Repair costs.
That's a great question. I wish I had my spreadsheet in front of me. One of the things that I do is I have separate saving accounts set aside. So I put their security deposits go into a savings account. I don't spend it. I don't touch it.
Is this per house, per LLC? You have separate accounts?
So I have a management company that handles all the money for my 10 houses. So it's all 10 houses combined.
Okay.
So then I have a reserve account that every month I transfer like $250 over into it. And I do all of those payments first before I pay myself. So, it's hard to say. It depends on what goes wrong. Things are going to go wrong. The more houses you have, the more things go wrong. So I've had some things it's a quick $100 once a year. I mean, I've had houses we've never repaired anything on, and other houses that it's like, oh, now what? When I buy a house and I do a complete renovation on it, it usually costs me around $20,000. It's kind of the average to do all new flooring, upgrade the bathrooms, kitchen, whatever. And one of the things I do is, again, here's the debt thing. I put it all on Home Depot card. They give you 0% if you spend big amounts for 3 years. And then, so I put it on that, and then I use my rental income to pay it off when I do that. But it doesn't have to be a $20,000 renovation. It depends on what you're buying and how much you want to put into it. You don't have to replace cabinets. You could paint them, things like that.
What's your biggest fear as a landlord?
My biggest fear as a landlord, I will tell you, when we all got sent into our houses last week, I got a little scared because sometimes it feels like a delicate house of cards. And I just had to trust that, okay, God, you've put me in this position. And for me, I had to go, okay, what if all my tenants cannot pay for the next 4 months? What do I do so I don't lose all my houses? And that's where having some cash in the bank really makes a difference. And so if you have that, my banker has recommended I have 6 months of mortgage payments in my bank, which I had. And then I dumped it into a flip house, and it's still
virus hit, so
it's still being worked on and shut us all down. So now I don't have it. But I have a backup plan. And so that's probably my biggest fear was like, none of us saw this coming. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, what if all my tenants can't pay rent? What do I do? I send like 10,000.
You recommend if someone went into a rental property and they leveraged it, they got a mortgage on it, let's say they put 20% down, that they still would have a number of months cash in the bank as a shock absorber for crazy events?
Yeah. Yeah. Or build towards that. It's a good idea. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's the end of the questions. Thanks again for sharing with us your insight and your wisdom. And we appreciate it. And I think the kingdom is going to benefit because of this.
Thank you for having me and good luck, everybody.
Yeah, Godspeed. Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.